Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm currently the owner of this amazing finca called known as La Verde. I didn't really choose it, just like there's not really an alternative for me. Maybe partly escape from my own culture, which in some ways is what's made me, being English. I don't like that it's a bit pessimistic in general. Some, it tends to be more pessimistic than other cultures. I think if you want to live in the countryside in the UK, it's quite difficult. It's very expensive to buy anywhere there. It's quite conservative. Um, and, it's quite traditional in a not very good way, in terms of not really being open to. I mean, I think it's changing, but I'm talking about, 30 years ago now. Um, and I found that a bit oppressive. And I would, I couldn't imagine going to live in the countryside in the UK. Maybe more now because things have changed a bit and I'm older. But at that point, and also the weather's not very good. So if you like to be outside and work outside, it's quite limiting because it's wet and cold a lot of the time. If you're still, in living where you were born and brought up, I think in some ways it restricts you, whereas if you go to another country it gives you more opportunities to be different in a way. um, so it's very complex, lots of different reasons and why I ended up here and doing what I'm doing here. Well, my typical day, when it's typical, because it's not always typical, sometimes something might happen to make it not typical, but would be getting up, um, making the sourdough bread, opening the polytunnel, feeding the chickens, having a chat to some of the volunteers or WhatsApping them on the group, making sure they're okay, they've got everything they need, getting some, maybe going to the gardens and picking some stuff for lunch, or if it's already in the house, just preparing it for lunch. Usually answering a few emails and doing some kind of administrative stuff. Occasionally having to buy something in town that we would need for building or working on the land or anything that we might need. I think the advantages to this lifestyle, um, the sense of freedom to just be your own boss and um, kind of choose what you want to do. I mean, obviously, you create something and then you have to look after it. So it's not like you choose what to do every day, but you choose what you make, you choose what you create. Being able to be in this amazing place, which is such a privilege, to be surrounded by nature and and to have the freedom to and to grow your own food, to eat amazing, healthy, freshly grown organic vegetables, um, and to feel like you're not making things worse in the world, basically. I mean, obviously, not everybody in the world can live this kind of lifestyle, because most people in the world live in cities. There's a big problem of depopulation of the countryside. I mean, there's a big problem in Spain, but I think it's a problem in most of the countries in the world that people are sort of migrating to the cities. So there's definitely room for some of the people in the cities to move to the countryside. The problem is they need to be trained. So, there needs to be more education, there needs to be more programs, there needs to be more encouragement, there needs to be a kind of demystification of, the kind of concept that the countryside is backward and boring and very hard work. I mean, it is hard work, but, so is working in an office most of your life, and sitting on a tube or a bus to get to work for an hour each way every day, and so there's definitely, I think, more than enough benefits to live in the countryside. um, But you know, this kind of lifestyle taken to the city, you can still do a lot living in the city, even if you don't have, you know, the space and the land to grow stuff on. You know, you can still take the same concepts and apply them to a city life. You know, I've often thought that if I had to go and live in a city again for any reason, I would grow vegetables on the roofs of the blocks of flats, and I'd start some kind of program with people who lived in flats to grow stuff on their balconies and in parks. And you know, there's a lot that could be done, you know, in an urban environment. The challenges of this lifestyle, you know, it is quite hard work physically. It's quite hard, but you know, if you're young and fit, that's a good thing. You know, people don't get enough exercise these days. Um, I suppose the other challenge is that sometimes things happen that you're not expecting and you can't control. Like the, you know, wild boar will get into the garden and they'll dig it up overnight, and that can be very frustrating and disillusioning. But you know, usually you fix the fence, you repair the gardens, and you carry on. So I suppose that's one of the challenges. Yeah, the other challenges are like, you know, you just have to deal with the weather. It's hot in the summer, so you have to adapt your working day to that. Apart from that, I don't think there's too many challenges really. Beginning, the challenges were more just on a sort of social level, just like, you know, not really knowing many people here or having any friends here or sort of, you know, close relationships. But, you know, that happens wherever you move to a new place, and you just have to create those things. And luckily I had amazing neighbours who were really nice and helpful, and you know, there's a nice community of people here, and it's kind of easy to meet people and create social bonds. And I suppose the important thing is to be able to speak the language. You know, if you move to a foreign country you can't speak the language, that is not very good, I don't think, really. Otherwise you end up in a ghetto speaking to just people of your own language, which is a bit sad, really. And also now, you know, I've had so many volunteers over the years that I have a lot of interaction on, you know, usually on quite a superficial level, but still we have a shared kind of a common thing that we share, which is living here and working here, which is something quite profound. Even though we maybe don't spend hours chatting together, just the fact that we are sharing this common aim and this common living space and eating together is quite a profound relationship in some ways. Kind of person suitable for this lifestyle? I mean, it depends. If you're starting from scratch, like I did, with, you know, no infrastructure, basically, I think you need to be, you know, not young. I mean, I was 35 when I first came here, so I wasn't super young, but I still had enough energy to, you know, to start a project and kind of see it through. But, you know, I don't think there's any limit to living this kind of lifestyle. You know, if you're doing it in collaboration with younger people and you're quite old, then it doesn't really matter. Or if there's already, you know, a lot of the infrastructure there, then I don't think age is really an issue. I think you do need to be prepared to relinquish a lot of things that people sort of take for granted as being, yeah, kind of essential for survival, like TV. Or, I mean, you don't need to relinquish TV. You can have a TV, but I think it's unnecessary here. And I think it takes up a lot of people's time, which could be much better spent doing something else. But that's a personal opinion. Yeah, you maybe need to relinquish being able to go out to the supermarket, you know, that's like 2 minutes away from your home and buy whatever you want at any minute of the day, which I think is also not really essential to survival. Yeah, you need to be able to adapt to the conditions of the, you know, the weather. So I don't really think there's any limit to or any kind of definition of the kind of person that could or could not live this kind of lifestyle. Really, you just need to want to, basically. I decided to have workaways. I mean, to begin with, when I first came here, it was great to have the help. I mean, I was just here on my own. And then, so, you know, people started coming. It was nice. They were, you know, very supportive, and it was nice to meet different people from different places. But then this place kind of took on a life of its own in a way. It kind of just started evolving into something a lot bigger, which ironically means that you need more people to look after it, the bigger it gets, and the more things you have, and the more gardens you have, and the more houses you have. So, you know, the more people you have, the more gardens you need, and then the more gardens you need, the more people you need to maintain them. So it just kind of evolved into this kind of setup with multiple dwellings, and the nature of the land is that it's quite big. There's always something to do. You know, there's never a dull moment. There's always something to do here if you want to do it. So you can always create something else, or build something else, or grow something else. So, and I guess I like to have interaction. I like to see people appreciating this place and sharing it, and learning from it and getting something out of it. So why not? The disadvantages are having to repeat things over and over again to new people when they arrive. Don't forget to shut the toilet lid, you know. Don't forget to put the lids back on the food in the pantry. How many times have I said that? I can't even bear to think. You know, and occasionally there's been one or two difficult people, but out of the thousands of people that have been here, that's a very small. I hope that volunteers will basically see alternatives, experience them, and see that it's possible to create something different. Not necessarily mimic what we're doing here or copy it, maybe, you know, aspects of it. But I suppose in general, just to see and to realize that there's possibilities. You don't necessarily have to just follow the kind of the way of life that you've been taught at school, or that you've seen your parents doing. Yeah, more in a general way, more just to see that there's alternatives, and this is one of them, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the only way. But yeah, and just to realize the importance of eating good, healthy food that's grown in a way that's respectful to the land, and that you can eat nice vegan food, that you can live in a way that's as most people's lifestyles tend to be. That's what I hope people will see, and I just hope that they will enjoy the experience here, basically. It's hard for me to imagine not being familiar with this lifestyle, because I've been living it for so long, so I have to really try and think outside the box, in terms of thinking of how it could be difficult for somebody coming here who's never experienced this kind of lifestyle before. I think the close proximity to nature sometimes can be quite challenging for people. You know, sometimes it's a bit challenging for me when I walk past the bushes and I hear the wild boar grunting at night. It takes a while to get used to it sometimes. I think it can be quite challenging, the fact that there's less distractions. I mean, now these days everybody's got mobile phones and they've got internet on their phones, so they can always be, you know, looking at their phones all day. But the fact that there's less distractions than in a sort of urban lifestyle anyway, sometimes means that people have to face themselves, basically, and deal with their own stuff, and maybe they'll be on their own for a while. I mean, normally it's quite social here, but there might be times when they're in their little cottage on their own and they're having to just spend time with themselves and deal with their own stuff, which can be quite challenging sometimes. Maybe that's a slight disadvantage of being here in this little bubble, that it maybe would be more productive to actually have more contact with other projects. I think it's the nature of this kind of lifestyle, and I think it's, you know, it's common to a lot of other projects that you become very focused on what you're doing. You don't necessarily have that much time to go and explore other places or meet other people. It'd be good to do, but you get very caught up in the day-to-day stuff. Maybe a bit of a shame not to have had more contact with other projects. There's been a few memorable things that I've stuck in my mind. I mean, the other day I had to go up the mountain to get the irrigation water from the river at like 5:30 in the morning. That was a memorable moment. In the dark, walking along the edge of this precipice and along this acequia, this irrigation channel, right up into the sort of mouth of the sort of heart of the valley to get the water in the moonlight. That was a memorable moment. The donkeys, there's been quite a few memorable moments. Things happen with them. There was one donkey we had that would always, there was always something happening with her. Once I was leading her back into the stable at night. She'd been out grazing and basically she fell into a massive hole. Well, the ground just opened up, and it's called a socavón in Spanish, when there's like a space and underneath the ground, and for some reason it just, you know, the ground above it collapses, and in this case it was because it was a heavy donkey walking on it, and she fell in this hole and we had to dig her out. She was fine. That was one. I think this kind of lifestyle, I mean, farming is never a big money spinner, let's face it. You know, it's like farming does not make a lot of money. So I think the only way to really, you know, be a farmer and to grow your own food, you basically need to combine it with something else. And in this case, I've chosen to do rental of the houses, sort of eco accommodation, which, you know, wasn't something that I really was on my list of things that I wanted to do. But actually, in a way, it's actually quite nice. The people that come and live here and stay here really appreciate the place. They also get to appreciate this kind of lifestyle and learn from it. They're usually really nice people and we have a nice relationship, and they bring in enough money to finance the rest of the project. So, you know, and this area is quite popular. There's a lot of people want to live here. So it's very easy to rent the houses. So I think, you know, some kind of combination activity, as well as being self-sufficient and growing your own food. But it could be anything. I mean, you know, it could be working online, or it could be a whole host of things, or having some kind of artisan business or whatever that would, you know, could easily be combined with this kind of lifestyle. And, you know, it's not unethical to do something else. It's just a way of being able to live like this and also financially be able to make it work.